Thank y'all for coming to Simply Neutralistic's first class in our Back to Basics series. Today we're going to be talking about hydration. You know, there's water all around us, and today it's kind of rainy, but are you really hydrated? That's what we're going to talk about today. But first I'd like to open up in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for the ones who were able to gather today, Lord, and the ones that are going to be watching this online. I just pray blessings upon them, Lord, and I just ask you to be with me, that your information is shared, Lord, and that your truths come out. Help us to take this information and apply it to our lives, to help us cleanse our temple and become healthier so that we can serve you, Lord. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Okay, so think back over everything you did so far this morning and your water usage. Did you take a shower? Maybe you washed dishes. Maybe you watered some plants. Of course, if you got lots of rain at your house last night, you would have had to water your plants. Did you cook anything that involved water this morning? Or did you have tea or maybe coffee? All of those involve water. So thinking back over everything, you can definitely assume that water is a very useful part of our life. We use it for cleansing. We use it for cooking. We use it for making beverages. And then we also use it for quenching our thirst. For some people say water does not quench their thirst. But in Bible times, the well was also their social gathering place. And we see that in the New Testament, where we read about an encounter that Jesus had with the woman at the well. And then in the Old Testament, we see that it was a direct reflection of their drought or prosperity as far as their vegetation goes. Crop failures and famine can result when you don't have enough water. Even Naaman was told to go cleanse in the river. And so we see all of those instances in the Bible. So what happens in our world, in our earth, when we do not grow, when we do not get enough water? I'm getting tongue-tied. What happens to the plants and vegetation and stuff? Yeah, they will brown. They don't grow. We hear the grass crunch under our feet sometimes in the summer. Well, that's also at the point where local governments step in and start rationing water. And you hear, especially down in Plant City, I remember hearing a lot of times when we would go through the water restrictions that even the farmers were affected because they could only irrigate certain times. And so it did affect their crops as well, which is really bad on strawberries. And then also all of the sand in the topsoil, or the soil, if there's any soil in your area, it ends up drying out and turning to sand and just blows around. And there's sometimes, I know I live across from a big farm, and so there's sometimes that it's literally like a dust bowl. Unreal. So what happens, with that in mind, what happens when we don't get enough water in our bodies? Any ideas?
Don't function properly, probably.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's major.
it is. That can be.
But you get thirsty first.
Mm-hmm.
I think I do. Knowing from myself, I need hydration.
Yeah, and the thirst is your first sign of dehydration. And by the time you get thirsty, you're already a little bit dehydrated. So when you ignore that warning sign, we're going to talk about things that cascade after that. So did you know that humans can live 5 weeks without food, but only 5 days without water? Our bodies, depending on what source you look at, our bodies are anywhere from 60% water to 86% water. I've seen different references in those ranges. The majority of the references that I see are like 60% water. So that's kind of what I'm going with. But still, we're the majority water. And if you look at our Earth, we have much more water than we do landmass. And the body requires water that is 100% pure hydrogen and oxygen. So you remember back to chemistry, water is H2O, 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 of oxygen. And Your body also likes it to be totally free of chemicals and any inorganic materials. Of course, with the way our environment is today, you don't always get water that's free of chemicals. There's usually something in the water, unfortunately. But inorganic minerals are found in the ground, and the plants are able to utilize them and convert them into usable forms for the plants. Not so much us. We don't have that capability in our bodies, so we rely on the plants to transform it for us, and then we're able to get those minerals. And if you read the labels of bottled water, a lot of times it'll have minerals added for taste, which they do tend to improve the taste. But those minerals, again, your body's not really able to use them like we think we should. Have you ever wondered what happens when you take a drink of water and like how it's broken down in your body or what happens to it once you swallow it? Not really. Probably not. Well, first, since it doesn't have to be broken down by the body, it's absorbed right away. Within just a matter of seconds, once it hits your stomach, it's already into the bloodstream and being absorbed. And from there, it gets transported to tissues, cells, and organs to then be used by those areas. And then the water exchanges nutrients for cell waste. So when your water goes into your bloodstream and then into the various cells, there's that exchange that's automatically taking place. Something we don't even have to think about, which is really cool. But without ample amounts of water, I'm starting to get ahead of myself in thoughts. Without ample amounts of water, that cell exchange for waste and nutrients can't take place. So you have nutrient-starved cells that are just accumulating waste and building up. And also water-soluble vitamins, like vitamin B and vitamin C, are not utilized well because you have to have water in order for your body to absorb them. So it also affects vitamins like that. You also may begin to see symptoms like hemorrhoids, bleeding gums, increased frequency of colds, dry skin, varicose veins, dizziness, fatigue, and much, much more. It just keeps going. From not having enough water, people have also been known to actually pass out. That happened to my niece several years ago. Water also helps the body to balance the pH in your body and also regulate body temperature. So if you're feeling too hot or too cold, try some water. That may help to even out your body temperature. Plus, the liver has an affinity for water. That's one of its favorite nutrients.
What's it?
The liver it loves water, which we'll get into liver a little bit later in another class. But our liver is our major detox organ. So, and in my opinion and in my experience, liver is one of the most important organs. If you don't have a healthy liver, it's going to cascade to everything else. So just by drinking water, you're going to help your liver, which is going to help filter out toxins and nutrients and everything and really help your body. And with our bodies being at least 60% water, it's easy to see how every function in our body relies on water. So what I have up here is the percent of water that is in each of these body parts. And I'm going to let you take a guess as to the percentage that's actually in there, and I'll write the correct answers up there. And for you watching the video, we will take a picture of this, and it'll be included in the copy in the email. Okay, so how much water do you think would be in tea? Percentage-wise.
Regards.
30%? It's actually less. And I think because they are so hard, there's not as much water, but they do contain water, which I don't know about y'all, but I never thought about it. Our bones containing water. But it's actually 10% water. What about the brain?
50%?
Higher.
70?
A little bit higher.
80?
80% water for the brain.
Mine must be about 95. It really is.
today. And with the brain being 80% water, that really makes sense that if you don't drink much water, then you have that afternoon brain fog, or where you just feel sluggish and everything in your brain. So in the afternoon, if you start hitting that 3 o'clock crash, then I guess I need to go on the side so I can stay on camera. If you hit that afternoon crash, grab a glass of water instead of a glass of caffeine or a coffee. And just see what benefit you get from that. Red blood cells.
95?
Actually, no, but that's in saliva.
Okay.
Saliva is 95%. So since you said that one. And so you start feeling that dry mouth. Yeah, that's why, because we need that water for our saliva. Red blood cells is actually a little bit less.
80? 80?
Well, 82 is blood.
80.
82%
82.
in your blood. So for those that are diabetic, we saw this with my grandmother. My grandmother was horrible about drinking water. And she would prick her finger to check her blood for her sugar. And she would have a hard time getting any of that water, any of the blood out. Yeah, there's not enough water. You also see this show up on blood work between your red blood cells. Sodium level, it can be real high if you're dehydrated. Red blood cells, that number is going to be off, usually high. Trying to think what some of the others are. The bun, looking at the creatinine and the bun, those also indicate dehydration. Okay, so red blood cells is actually 68% water.
Red blood cells, 68.
Yes, ma'am.
What was
82 was the blood. We have blood and then red blood cells. The next one we're gonna skip one for now. Lungs. That's something, especially now with all the respiratory stuff going around, and lungs have a lot of moisture to them. And if we don't maintain that moisture in them, you can also have all kinds of issues show up. So any guess as to what the percentage of water is in lungs?
80%?
Bingo.
80%.
Okay, so muscle. Muscle has to stay good and moist. Close, 75%. So if your muscles start dehydrating, then you're going to have issues with the strength. You could have issues with it twitching. You have pains as your a lot of times, even as your muscles or your bone dehydrate, you can have pains inside. And your heart is also a huge muscle. So it affects your heart as well. Cartilage. This is another one with people having joint pain. Especially if they didn't drink water very much through their, adulthood up until senior adulthood, when arthritis symptoms really start to set in, like your osteoarthritis. Then it can affect the cartilage in your joints and everything as well. So how much water do you think is in our cartilage? 55. Okay, in our bones, that's another one that, like the teeth, I was amazed at how much water was actually in bones. But if they're dehydrated, they're not going to stay hard and firm. They're going to break. So bones are higher in water than teeth, but not as high as some of these other components. So about how much water do you think would be in bones? 25. Now, remember I said liver likes water? So it's high in water, but not as high as in blood. So what percentage would you guess on the liver?
70.
71. So 70, 71. Now the lymph, if you know anything about the lymph, if your lymphatic system is not moving, it becomes stagnant and it's like a pond. It just gets green and yucky. But the lymph is the last stage as to how your toxins and everything get removed out of your body. So first it has to be moving. But second, you also need fluids. If you don't have enough fluids, you're not going to thin out the lymph enough for it to move. One thing that my chiropractor years ago even told me, if you're getting mucus and respiratory problems, drink water. It helps to thin out the mucus. Well, this follows in that same cascade. So lymph is actually the highest in water out of all of our organs. So what percentage would you venture to guess?
Lymph is the highest. Goes to 90, 95,
Yeah, 94%.
94.
You can get closer if you need to, Montana. I take it you got it? Okay. So this gives you an indication here of what in your body is higher in liquids, what, even down to your teeth. So if you're dehydrated, you can also have teeth issues because of that, because you're taking away that good support. Okay, so what are some symptoms of dehydration? By my eraser. Okay, so some symptoms of dehydration. We already mentioned dry mouth. Bless you. So what are some other symptoms y'all can think of? Bless you. Bless you. Do you need tissue?
Hopefully that's not bad. Okay.
There's some tissues up top there.
Thank you.
What are some other issues you can think of dehydration? Yeah, it could be muscle spasms. No, athletes a lot of times experience that if they don't stay hydrated while they're exercising.
Lightheaded?
Lightheaded?
That's how I get a lot. Is like if I haven't had enough water, I get anything lightheaded.
Here's a story of a symptom that is not a common symptom at all, at least in my opinion, but it's one that I determined with my youngest daughter, Montana. She would have bouts where, like, not that she would get irritable, but she'd come to tears a whole lot faster. Like things would bother her a whole lot faster. She couldn't cope with things. This was back when she was a toddler. And I'd look at her and I'd go, after a little bit, it took me a little while to figure this relation out with her. But anytime she did that, I'm like, have you had any water? She's like, no, not really. Okay, go drink water. So even our emotions can be affected by water. Okay, so what are some others? Especially keeping in mind the list that we went through of the dehydration, of the percentages of water.
Stiffness in your muscles.
Yeah, stiffness in muscles and even joints. There's one that's pretty common, it seems like among men especially, that's kidney related.
Kidney stones?
Kidney stones.
Mhm, right. Neighborhood problems with that. Diet.
Yeah.
Robert's doing with it now, and he's like, I told him it's because he eats a lot of Tums.
The wrong calciums can do
Mary
it.
eats Tums like,
Even shortness of breath. If you remember back to the lungs having like 80% water, shortness of breath can also be affected.
breathe when they get full of water either.
No, you can't. Too much or too little is bad. Headaches. That's another that's common, but we don't always attribute it to lack of water.
Bottle full of water. That was with me this morning. I left it in.
Another one that we don't often contribute is low energy. But if you don't have enough energy, it could be just simply lack of water. And even blood pressure and blood sugar issues. That can also be huge. I'm not good about writing and talking at the same time, so. But and those are only a portion of them. There's a lot more symptoms. But those are probably the more common ones too. But especially blood pressure. That's something that I've really started paying attention to with my mom since she's had all of her blood pressure issues. If it's low, drinking water a lot of times will help to increase that blood volume because the blood is so high in water. And so it can help to bring your blood pressure up. And then if it's too high, you can also drink water and it helps to thin it back down. So then it'll come back down some. So that's in your thought process with blood pressure. If you start experiencing that, or if you do have those issues, keep that in mind too. And then blood sugar. If you're dehydrated, your sugar level naturally is going to be high because the water then helps to dilute the insulin that's in your blood. So that's a good one too. So when less than ample water is consumed, as we can see, a cascade of events will start. So we just talked about that. I was going to say, talking about the blood volume increasing and decreasing. And it also has a lot to do with the nutrients and the oxygen level in your blood, which can also go back to the shortness of breath. If you don't have enough oxygen throughout, it may too be because you're dehydrated. When we don't drink enough water, our body then begins to conserve water and make adjustments, much like the government does for us. Your body naturally does the same thing. And the first thing it's going to do is make sure those major organs are protected. So like your liver, your heart, the spleen, all of those major ones. And as poor water consumption continues, then those major organs are also going to suffer because they're not going to have enough nutrients in them. They're not going to have enough water to function and not enough oxygen either to circulate throughout. One of the classes that we'll be doing, we'll be talking about deep breathing. And that's kind of the same concept with that. If you always take shallow breaths and you never get that good deep breath that's coming from down here, not all of your blood that runs through your lungs are going to be oxygenated either. So thinking with that, consider a pond. There's no water movement in the pond. There's no aerator or anything like that. So it just goes within the banks there and it becomes stagnant after a while and green and yucky. And that's kind of a picture of what your body starts looking like on the inside. If the engine light comes on in your car, are you one that just puts a tape over it and ignore it? Turn the radio up louder or
Stays
something?
on in one car.
Some of them do anymore, yeah. Or do you, especially initially, if it's not been on and it comes on, would you be, wanting to check it out, make sure everything's okay with it, or would you just kind of cover it up and mask the symptoms? Well, there's a group of people that just mask the symptoms, and that's a lot of what happens when you don't drink enough water, and then you have these health issues that come up. And what do most of us do? We run to the doctor first. Well, they don't always think about water. There's more of them that are talking about that now, which is great, but that's not always the first thing they think of. So then you end up on this roller coaster of going through tests and prescriptions and everything else, when some of it can actually be corrected just by water. So how much water do you drink a day?
Varies with plain water.
Plain water.
I drink quite a bit, usually. There are days when I don't this much.
Mm-hmm. And during the winter, is it harder or easier for you to drink water during the winter?
Probably in summer.
Summer's easier. Now, and I think because it's not as hot in the winter, we don't always think about it. We don't get as thirsty. Miss Pat, what about you?
I get mine in Diet Dr. Pepper.
I'm glad you mentioned that. We're going to talk about that in a second. And that's pretty common when I talk to a lot of people, and it doesn't matter the age group. My husband is one, he doesn't like the taste of water. If it's ice cold, he'll drink it, but he's not one to really reach for water. Sweet tea does better for him as far as quenching the thirst, but sweet tea has the same issues because it's got the sugar, it's got the caffeine, it's not plain water. So again, you're setting yourself up. The most water I think I had seen him drink was when he had kidney stones a few years ago, and that really woke him up after that. And now, if he's working, he'll drink water a little bit easier. So the average size adult actually requires about 3 quarts of water a day. So that's at 32 ounces a quart, so that's 96 ounces. And that's the average size adult. It's going to vary based on your weight. You want to get about half of your body weight in ounces in water every day. So what you do is you take your body weight and then divide it by 2. That tells you how many ounces you need. So if you were 150 pounds, you should consume about 75 ounces of water per day. Now, with that in mind, if you're under water restrictions from your doctor, by all means follow those restrictions. There's reasons for it. But you still want to make sure that you get the fluids that they say you need to get. There's, so anyway, follow your doctor on that. During periods of exercise or high humidity, living in Florida, we have a lot of high humidity and it's coming very soon. But if you're exercising, you're outside working, you're sweating, we have the humid climate, you want to increase your water intake by 1/3. So that's pretty easy to figure out too, but keep that in mind. And this amount of water is the minimum amount that your body needs in order to carry nutrients to the cells, carry waste away from the cells, and also keep your organs functioning and working properly. So according to the National Academic of Sciences, which in some research for this, I saw where they've recently increased the amount of water they recommend for people, which just thrills me when they start doing that. It thrills me. But the recommended intake from the National Academics of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine is for men 3 liters, which is about 99 ounces. So that 150 pound example we talked about. For women, it's roughly 92 ounces. So if you think of quart jars, those are easy to set up on your counter and do it that way. You also get water and nutrients from fresh fruits, fresh vegetables. The huge problem we have in our society is that's not a common diet for people these days. So you're not getting, if you don't get fluid from the produce and from vegetables, then you don't drink the water, you're chronically dehydrated at this point. And if you're not used to drinking that much water, if you currently are not at those levels, then gradually increase. Because probably what's going through your brain right now is, that's a lot of water. I could never drink that much water. I'll be in the bathroom all day long. At first, you probably will be, because your body's flushing out and it's finally getting the resources that it needs to be able to function. So at first you do see an increase with that. It should level out. But something else you can do is just gradually increase. You know, if you're not used to drinking 60 or 70 ounces of water, then gradually move up to that. Don't jump off today or tomorrow and start drinking that, because you will be in the bathroom all day. And let's face it, we still have to function. A lot of us have to work and everything. So that's one way, just gradually increase it to get up to that level. Another way that you can increase your fluid intake is by consuming fresh fruits and vegetables. About 1 quart of water can be absorbed just from that produce. The vegetables that are highest in water content are cucumbers. Ding, 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 cucumbers. Lettuce. Celery. And if you want any of these repeated, just speak up. Chinese cabbage. Zucchini and squash. Tomatoes. Those are real high. Bell peppers. Asparagus. Portobello mushrooms. Swiss chard. Cabbage, cauliflower, and turnips, which cooking methods are going to destroy some of that. They're going to take out some of that moisture, depending on how you cook it. So keep that in mind too. The fresh and the raw is going to be better on those.
Turnips?
Turnips. And I'm not sure if they were talking about the turnip leaves or turnip roots specifically.
Okay, I missed between Chinese cabbage and Swiss chard.
Okay, zucchini and squash. Tomatoes. And while you're writing these, I'm going to erase the board. Bell peppers. And asparagus. Portobello mushrooms. Which I think the portobellos were specifically listed because they may be higher in water than regular mushrooms.
Grocery store in Gainesville is Lucky's.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
They
I
most.
had told you there's a Sprouts out west. There's a new Sprouts in Jacksonville.
Really?
And it's out in that Butler to the big mall out there.
Uh-huh. Is it the Avenues? No, it's
that's
not.
on 95.
Okay.
This you get off 95, go toward the beaches.
Okay.
Butler.
Mm-hmm.
And it's out. You take Gate Boulevard. It's right there.
Okay.
But it's a little ways out.
Is it
I really
like
like
Whole
Sprouts.
Foods or something?
It's kind of like Lucky's.
I haven't been in a Lucky's, but I think they're putting one in down in Brandon. But
I like Lucky's pretty
It's on
good.
441, right off 441.
is it in
Before you get down.
Gainesville?
Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's closed, but it's one of them that's closing apparently.
Sprouts?
Lucky's.
Oh, I mean Lucky's.
Mhm.
It is?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's a big one.
Yeah.
there on-
That was pretty nice. They had a good assortment of vegetables and produce, not produce, organic produce. And they even had a section in there where they would squeeze juices and stuff for you, like fresh every day. And then they had a awesome salad bar in an area where you can get some hot foods and stuff. Their meats were really nice. They even had Piedmontese. That was the first time that I had seen the actual cuts of the Piedmontese. But Piedmontese is an Italian cattle, but it's a double muscle cattle. And I learned about it in FFA and everything. But one of the trips in there, they were advertising Piedmontese. I'm like, oh my gosh, I know what that is. The list that I saw, Gainesville wasn't listed on all of them that were closing or being bought out by Publix and Aldi's were buying some of their stores. So I don't know for sure that they're closed, but I'm thinking they may be. Sad. Yeah.
See.
Yeah. Something else to consider when you drink caffeinated beverages, i.e. Diet Pepsi or Diet Dr. Pepper. But this can be Coca-Colas, this can be sweet tea, unsweet tea, if it's caffeinated, coffees, energy drinks. Kids are on this kick with the energy drinks now. But anything that has caffeine in it is a diuretic. So if you drink a 12-ounce can of Coke, you really need to have 24 ounces of water with it. Otherwise, you're in a deficit, like huge. Because it's got to be one for one to cancel out, but you really need to drink that other one to keep from being dehydrated. And you want that water to preferably be plain water. Something you can do to help flavor the water, especially for those that don't like the taste of water, you can put cucumbers in there, sliced cucumbers, and that helps to give the mineral content as well from the cucumbers. A little bit of lemon juice or lime juice. If you do more than just like a squeeze to taste it of the lemon juice, you don't want to do that around the time that you're eating a meal, because if you have a lot of lemon juice in your water or lime juice, you're going to mess up your digestive juices. And we'll get into that in another class too.
So what about the deal of drinking a full glass of water with some lemon in it before a meal?
Mm-hmm. The best time to do that is actually on an empty stomach, preferably first thing in the morning. And you take the fresh squeezed lemon juice and you squeeze it half of the lemon juice per like 8 to 10 ounces of water. What that does is it helps to set your liver up for digestion that day. Lemon is very supportive of the liver. It's very cleansing. And plus it helps to cleanse out your system. There are some people that have said when they do that and it's more like a warm, like a, not a hot tea, but yeah, more tepid like that that has actually helped them to eliminate and, use the bathroom, which is another issue we have these days where not everybody, the majority of us seem to be highly constipated. So that's another benefit you can have out of that. Plus the lemon juice is very lemons are very alkalizing in your body. Outside the body, they're very acidic. But once you ingest them, they're very alkalizing. One of the reasons for that is everything in our body, everything that we eat goes this way in our cells. So it's clockwise. Lemons go counterclockwise. So they're helping to pull out toxins and everything that shouldn't be there. So if you can't do it first thing in the morning, like if you can't tolerate something a little more acidic like that, if you do it on an empty stomach, preferably 2 hours after a meal or an hour before a meal. If you get it too close to the meal, then you're going to dilute your juices and make your digestive juices a little more alkaline. We don't want that either. Drinking a glass of water up to like 30 minutes, just even plain water up to 30 minutes before you eat is very beneficial. And then don't drink anything when you eat. Anna, yes, Nan's here. Yeah, thank you.
Have a good day.
You too. If you'll grab the box and just stick it back in the bag. Okay, so dehydration. So just 2% dehydration can actually decrease our performance by 20%. So this can be athletic performance, this can be school or work, mentally, you get that brain fog in the afternoon, all of that can be affected. When you're 4% dehydrated, then you have a decrease of muscle performance. At 5%, you have a decrease of 30% performance. Plus, at this point, you start getting headaches. Really, when that starts setting in. You also get drowsiness at 30%, and loss of ability to concentrate, and also unreasonable impatience. So if you've ever been around somebody who's just really impatient, just tell them to go drink water.
Causing headaches.
Headaches, drowsiness. Can't concentrate.
It's never been 5%. I never get drowsy. I wish I did.
Oh, yeah. Well, one of the classes we're going to talk about is sleep, because that's another really important foundation. So,
Low concentration and then,
unreasonable impatience. At 6%, your body temperature is affected.
does it go up or down?
It probably varies. What I see in Cheyenne when she doesn't drink enough water, her body temperature raises. So she'll start scratching at the back of her knees because that's where she gets hot first. And so I would say probably more so increase, but I imagine it can drop also. Because your circulation is affected when you're dehydrated, your blood's not able to circulate as well. And so that also can affect the body temperature. Like people that are on heart meds a lot of times have really cold hands because it affects that circulation. At 7%, there's a good chance you're going to pass out. And then your kidneys also get affected with all this really, really bad. Your kidneys is a huge filter in our body. It's one of the main elimination organs. And your kidneys actually receive and filter out your entire blood supply in every 15 minutes. Or excuse me, it's 15 times per hour.
Oh, okay.
So maybe not every 15 minutes, but it's 15 times per hour. Your blood is circulating through your kidneys. So if you're not drinking enough water, your blood is not circulating and filtering out through your kidneys. Things are getting stagnant and building up. And again, we start to see all kinds of health issues. So when you don't consume enough water, remember back to our, analogy with the grass and everything outside when we're in a drought and you walk outside and it crunches under your feet. Well, that's what's happening inside you. Or another one that I like to use, I've used it for years, is the grape and the raisin. A raisin is a shriveled up grape. You don't want to look like a raisin on the inside. You want to look like a grape on the inside. And also at the 2% dehydration, I forgot to mention this, there was a study done in the 80s, and that's when they really started seeing the effects on dehydration. But at 2% dehydration, it can also affect your peripheral vision. So think of when you're driving the car, this up here is already affected. Reduced speed and accuracy. So again, with your motor skills, that can be affected. And even your attention span. and your short-term memory. So have you seen these kids or even these adults that just, they can't sit still, always fidgeting, always moving, always getting up and doing things. And a lot of it goes back to pH, which eventually we'll talk a little bit about pH in your body. But if you don't have enough water in your system, if you're not well hydrated, you're going to have way more salt, and salt's a conductor. So you have all this electrical energy running through your body, and you've got to move. I know when I was a kid, I'd sit there and my leg was always moving. I drank water, probably not enough.
That is, I noticed when I sat in church,
Mm-hmm.
it was like, I'm sitting still. And just,
Yeah.
I don't do that when I'm sitting in a recliner at home.
That's funny. Mm-hmm.
And I noticed in church, I sit there and
Mm-hmm. I can't sit still. I have a hard time sitting still. And sometimes when it's really bad, when I notice it, I'm like, how much water have I had today? Okay, so now we're going to get into some of the myths about water. The first myth is that all beverages count towards your total water consumption, which that myth is partially true. It's true that all liquids are absorbed into your system through your stomach, into the GI system, and straight into the bloodstream, but not all liquid is created equal. You've got the caffeinated beverages where it's a liquid, your Coca-Colas, your Dr. Peppers, sweet tea even. They're liquids, they're all going to get absorbed, they're all going to do some aspect of hydration unless they're caffeinated, and then they've got the opposite effect. They're going to dehydrate. If you take your plant outside, for instance, and you give it sweet tea all the time, how long do you think that's going to last? Regular tea, there's some that really like it, that's just plain tea because of the fertilizer that's in it. Not fertilizer, but the tannins.
They like
Mm-hmm.
coffee grounds.
That's a great natural fertilizer.
they like the pH.
But they like eggshells too. I got a bunch of eggshells I put in processed.
Yep.
They did
I
that.
haven't put them on my plants yet.
Yeah, it's a good calcium source for them. The plain water is the only beverage that doesn't have to be broken down. Everything else, your body has to go through a process breaking it down before it can pull out anything that's usable, if there's anything that's usable. So those beverages don't perform the same task as ordinary water. They can't immediately exchange any cell nutrients for waste. So if you think of our population today, the majority of them who don't drink much water, they tend to be overweight. Or again, they have all kinds of health issues with them. What that does is your body, anything that your body cannot process out, it sees it as a toxin. So it's going to encapsulate it in fat and store it until it figures out what to do with it, which sometimes, yeah. So drinking water will also help you to flush out those toxins because then it can go, oh, I can get rid of this. Okay, go. So keep in mind that just because it is made with water doesn't mean it can replace water. Even fruit juices. There's a lot of kids that they'll drink a lot of fruit juices, but they won't drink water. Where fruit juices are better than drinking a Coca-Cola, they still have some of the same health effects because if it's store-bought, you've got all the sugars in there. But then on top of that, even if it's freshly squeezed at home, you've got an extra concentration of those fruit sugars that you wouldn't have if you were to eat like the apple, for instance, versus apple juice. You've got a higher concentration because you've taken out the fiber. So where your body, and we'll get into this in the next class with nutrition, but where your body takes that apple and it breaks down the juices and the fiber and everything, and it can use different components of it. When you drink the straight juice, it just immediately all goes into your bloodstream, all of that sugar. But again, it doesn't have the same effect where it can't really cleanse the body like water does. And otherwise, why would God have told Naaman to go and wash in Elijah the prophet told Naaman to go to the river and cleanse. Plain water is very cleansing. Okay, so myth number 2. Water is water. I hear that a lot. Well, this goes back to not all water is created equal. And nowadays you have well water, you have spring water, you have distilled water, you have city water, which is the worst. You have reverse osmosis, all kinds of different bottled waters, sparkling water, and alkaline water. That's probably the newest one that's hit the market is the alkaline water. So to start with distilled, they're talking about steam distilled water, and this is where all of the minerals, everything has been totally processed out of the water. You can get the steam distiller on your countertop. It's something you can do at home. If you purchase the steam distilled water, most of the time it's going to be in a plastic jug, which the plastic jugs in itself have issues because of the BPA, or if it's a BPA free, they're still finding the same issues with that. It disrupts the hormones, and again, it builds up as a toxin in your body. I think of that now every time I drink water out of a plastic bottle.
Sometimes it's better than no water.
Yes.
I hope.
Yes,
Yeah,
it
my new
is.
distiller has a plastic bottle. My old ones all had glass bottles, but I always have issues with the little thing around the top breaking.
Huh.
This one came with plastic ones. And I poured out of one plastic bottle into another plastic.
Yeah. Plastic is because it's
It's
so
supposed to be BPA free.
yeah. And even in that, they're finding there was a study that I had done. Not that I did, excuse me. A study that a friend of mine sent me that was on BPA free plastics, and they had taken all of the mouse cages and everything. They were all BPA free. And she was specifically seeing what effect the BPA free had on the mice. Well, she was finding the same hormone issues that were in those mice versus the ones that were in the regular cages that were made out of BPA plastic. And she ended up determining the same issues. They're still being made with a component. It's not the full BPA, but it's still a portion of it, and that's where the issues are coming in. So glass is better anytime you can use
Yeah,
glass.
just use quart jars,
Mhm.
you know.
I have them. I guess I can start using them. I have the half-gallon jars.
Yeah, those would be even better.
And you can get gallon jars now. I mean, you can get all kind of glass containers.
Yeah,
Right.
even food storage in the glass
Yeah.
containers. We're switching over to
As
that.
much as I can. That's why I say all those conditions, you might have been.
Yeah.
I use those to put my water in. Take, you know, when we get in the car, unless I leave it on the cabinet, there's at least
Do
one.
you distill your own water?
We just drink our well water, which is not bad, but I don't do distilled.
We had the well we had when we moved up there. The water was better than the well we have now.
Mm-hmm.
When they put the wells in for the trees, then our well went bad, so we had to start using the other one. And it's like has red tape. It must have clay or something.
Either that or
I think we're
iron.
gonna Larry's been talking to Mark about it.
Usually if you have a red tin, it's iron, like iron algae. And that can be filtered out.
Yeah.
I know ours had a bunch of like calcium deposits that were floating around in our water. And so we have this, I don't know exactly how it works. I don't understand it all, but it's this little metal piece that's on our pipes, and it helps to filter out some of the minerals and stuff. It's by a company called Magnation, and so it's got some magnets in it and stuff. And since we did that, our water looks a whole lot clearer. To me, it tastes better too, but it's supposed to help to disperse the water to make it more absorbable in the soil and stuff. I don't know how well that's working on that part, but I like the water better anyway. But yeah, well water is huge, especially around here. And we do well water in the house too. Your body, from what Dr. Bill had always said and from what he had learned, like we have the really hard water up here. So when you have hard water, like your body tends to adjust to it. Because one of the questions I asked him was, won't the extra calcium in it like harden your arteries and stuff? He's like, well, really? He said your body adjusts to it. But even that, depending on what chemicals and stuff are in your water, because you can get your water tested to find out what bacteria and stuff. And that's great. And then living in an agriculture area, some of the chemicals are going to be filtered out through the ground, but I'm sure there's a portion of that comes in there. And there's all kinds of filters talking about water filters, even carbon
When we
filters.
came home last week, I was with 3 mailboxes down at the end of our driveway. There was a little dowel stick with a plastic bag on it. It was to check your water, and the people will come back and get it. I'm sure they're probably selling water softeners.
Probably.
Careful, because some of them charge $100 just to.
Yeah, and it said if you don't use it, to put it back out there, and they'll come and get them. I haven't noticed whether they come back and got them once, because nobody lives in the house across the street, so nobody's gonna pick that one up.
Right.
I haven't noticed. It was dark last night when I went to the mailbox. So I haven't noticed it. And I haven't put mine back out there, but I'm not going to be using it because Larry's been talking more about it. So anyway, maybe we'll get I told him I wish we could go back to the old well because the water was a lot better.
Yeah.
It was good.
It's amazing how just moving the well, how it
not
affects
that far, you know.
I know where our well is, we're in the line when the Swanee River floods, we get the tannins that come into our water. So it's but Miss Pearl's moved, I don't know how many feet, but hers was over here and it was right in line with ours. So hers would turn and then ours would turn. Well, she had to dig a new well in it. So it's over here where it's more in line with our house, but not the same aquifer that our well is on. And she'll get a tinge and that's it. Won't really turn. Okay, so distilled water, we talked about that. The good thing about distilled water is it's a hungry water. So if you're needing to detox, if you're needing to even flush anything out, even help with the cholesterol, doing distilled water for 4 days, there's actually been a reduction in cholesterol seen. It's not a major one, but sometimes it's enough to bring those points down just a little bit. But it's a hungry water, so it latches onto toxins, to excess minerals in your body, to any of that shouldn't be there, and pulls it out.
Was there anything wrong with drinking it all the time?
Yes and no.
Because that's all Larry drinks.
Yeah, if you do it all the time, you want to make sure you get minerals in your body, because where it's pulling the excess out, you don't want anything to risk pulling it out of your cells. It shouldn't, but I know that's one concern. So if you do it short term, like a couple of weeks, it wouldn't be bad to do it constantly as your only water source. But if you do it long term, I would suggest minerals, either putting like even a little bit of Himalayan sea salt or the high mineral salt like that into your water, getting a mineral supplement, either liquid or something to add to it, or take a mineral supplement, especially because our foods don't have the minerals in it that they should. So long term, that's what I recommend, a mineral supplement to go with it. And then city water has been treated with chlorine to kill the bacteria. It's been treated with fluoride that's supposed to help with tooth decay in kids. Fluoride is actually the byproduct of another industry. That's where they get the fluoride from. So it's a byproduct, which means it's the leftovers. Probably not the best fluoride source. Your well water is going to vary, like we talked about. Another one that I really like is reverse osmosis. And you can also get this either to go with your kitchen sink, or you can get it for your whole house. The whole house reverse osmosis system is a little bit pricier. But the one at the sink is pretty affordable. But your water goes through several different filters. And so through that, those filters and everything, it's filtering out the impurities, and some of the minerals get pulled out of it as well. But go back to my notes on this. It's not as hungry of a water as distilled water. So there are still times that you would want to do distilled water, even if you have reverse osmosis. But it's great for filtering out. There's a lot of the bottled water companies that are utilizing that. And they'll take municipal water sources, city water, and run it through the reverse osmosis. And then it's pure enough they can actually sell it as bottled water. One of the purest ones that Bill had found was Sam's Club water, purified water.
Right.
Yeah, he liked that one real well. There was a test that he would do on the waters, and that one had the least of the impurities in it. Another company that does that is Aquafina. I don't like the taste of Aquafina, but I like it over Dasani. Dasani's another one that they use, city water. So bottled water, since we're talking about that, there's some companies that also run it through ultraviolet and ozone infiltrations. That's actually what Aquafina does. They do the RO and then they run it through both of those. Then they bottle it. If not stored correctly, all plastic, like we talked about, can leach impurities into the water. So if you have a habit of leaving a bottled water in the car all the time, don't drink it, pour it out, because you're going to have so many toxins in there. It's really not good water. And then the BPA, we talked about that, where the BPA actually mimics hormones in your body. So even the BPA free, you still run into that.
It does what?
It mimics hormones in your body. So anytime you can use glass or stainless steel, that's going to be better. And going back to what you said, any water is better than no water. So if it's a choice between going without water or drinking it out of the plastic, go ahead, drink it out of the plastic. Right. Right.
And we did it occasionally.
Sparkling water. That's one. I keep getting a lot of questions on sparkling water. And one of the questions is, well, sparkling water is good, healthy water, right? And initially I'm like, no, because it's carbonated. Well, when I started researching this a little bit more, it became a longer answer instead of just, no, it's not a good water. There are some sparkling waters out there on the market that are good because they come from a natural sparkling source. Then you have the ones that are man-made and they're carbonated. Those are the sparkling waters you want to stay away from. You don't want that extra carbonation. You're just putting CO2 gas in your system. That's where they get the carbonation from. But there's companies like Perrier, which is one of the oldest ones. And theirs is in glass bottles. So there you go. There's both things right there. Some of them are in aluminum cans. Those probably aren't the best source either. But Perrier,
Go ahead.
IER. Another one is called Vichy Catalan. VICHY. And then the second word is Catalan. CAT as in Tom, ALAN. Those are, Vichy Catalan is from Spain. And it's also from a source that is naturally sparkling, naturally carbonated. And it has something to do with the whole filter system that it goes through in the ground.
I was going to say, what kind of a source do you get carbonated water from?
Yeah, it's just
It's
a
natural.
it's just a natural source. It's springs that they have found through the years that just naturally have that. If we have any in the U.S., there's like one, and I couldn't find where it was verified that we have any here in the U.S. It seems to more be in Europe. And those don't have the sugars to them. They don't have the carbonation to them. They do have minerals in them, which some sources you read say those minerals are fine. Other sources would say we can't absorb them. So I go along more with they're more like a soil mineral, and they're made for the plants to absorb, not so much us to convert. So occasionally those wouldn't be bad. As a regular water source, I still wouldn't totally go with that. But it is a natural mineral water.
Lee and Jim drove for 10 miles. They're down to a mountain spring. And people, that's where they go.
They used to go, yeah, I've seen that. We went up there one time, we're going with, we had Larry's cousin lived in Maryville. And we used to go up there and we'd go over to Pigeon Forge and they'd take us by there and they'd say people would just come and bring their containers and it just drips out of the side of the mountain.
To me,
I
that
don't
would be
think
the
it's there anymore. Is it
absolute
still there? Do you
The
know?
one there in Maryville is,
Okay.
it's 5 to 10 miles out of town.
Yeah, Ford Pigeon Forge, yeah.
Yeah, that to me would be the best source right there. There was when we were up in the mountains, there was one waterfall that we'd come to that we had climbed up the mountain some to see it, and it was you just coming down off the mountain and through the rocks and everything and going right through us. And of course, they have a sign because of bacteria that can live in the water and stuff. Don't drink the water. And I'm like, I would love to. It would be so pure. There was also a study done with sparkling water, and this in my research on sparkling water is when I found out about this study and this particular company. But they in this study they were saying that the sparkling water is fantastic for you. That there's it's as good if not better than just regular plain water. Well, when I dug further into who did the study, it was this Vichy Catalan company that supplied the sparkling water. So I'm like, no wonder it's a pure source, not some of the others that we get here in the U.S. that's cheaper and carbonated. So keep in mind too, look at your sources. And even with any studies, if you have the time to go through and really research who's behind the study.
So the smart water, do you know anything about that?
It's not one of my favorites. I don't think it's like absolutely horrible, but on a regular basis, I still wouldn't do
Because
it.
when we go to Tampa or somewhere and we don't take distilled water that I make, then he uses the smart water usually if we go buy some.
And that would be better than like drinking city water down there.
His dad has a well and he has a water softener too. But he still doesn't drink that.
Yeah.
But it even has a reddish, it'll leave a red ring around the toilet,
It doesn't have the iron filter on it.
you know.
Yeah, there's this when you have iron or tannin in your water, there's a specific filter that you have to get to go with
I
it.
wonder about the composite, how they come up with this filter water.
A lot of it's carbon. The cotton's from not cottonseed. Oh my gosh, coconut shells.
Oh,
And it's like the activated charcoal that you can get in supplements. That's what it is. If it's a carbon filter, and the carbon, the more things I read about the carbon, what it filters out, it's amazing what all it filters out. And I hope to do a little bit of a class or a video segment or something on that because I'm not well versed in it. Mark's that's Mark's part. He's teaching me, but that's Mark's part. But even down to some viruses and stuff, they're saying carbon can filter it out. Yeah. So more to come on that though. The alkaline water. The one issue with alkaline water that I have is water in nature is not really, really alkaline. The alkaline water you get on the market, you see 8.0 and higher. Water naturally is at like a 7.0, especially around here. It's right around a 7, which is neutral on the pH range. So that's one issue that I have is it's not naturally found in nature. The other issue that I have is people drink so much alkaline water, it's going to end up diluting your digestive juices. Initially, your body, when it hits your stomach acid, if you have ample stomach acid, initially the acid's going to overtake it, so it's not going to be alkaline when it hits your system anyway. But over time, you can also dilute your stomach acid enough that it's going to remain alkaline. Or if you're taking PPIs or Tums a lot, anything to counteract the stomach acid, that's also going to dilute that. So adding that to it just seems to compound the issue. Occasionally, it may not be bad, but on a long-term basis, I wouldn't do the alkaline water at all. The having an alkaline system, and this is something too that we'll be addressing later on, but there's a lot of people that believe you have to have an alkaline pH in order to be healthy and in order to avoid certain diseases. When your body's too alkaline, you have the same issues as you do when it's too acidic. Because when your body's alkaline, things get stagnant. We go back to that pond that couldn't move. And things, bacteria and everything builds up. And you can create acidic areas in your cells. That's where cells aren't able to shut off and they just keep growing and growing and growing, or you have bacteria that starts breeding and everything, and then you have compounding issues. So we'll get into pH. That's another class, so I don't want to deviate too much on that one. But adding the fresh lemon juice to your water, that's a great way to naturally alkalize your water. And that is going to help with digestion, as long as you don't do it when you eat. You don't want a bunch of lemon in your water when you're trying to eat. Okay, mineral water or vitamin water, like you were saying, Pat, you were asking me about. Vitamin water and smart water is made by Coca-Cola. So right there, I'm like, no. Coca-Cola is not going to be in your best interest. Pepsi-Cola is not going to be in your best interest. Yes, vitamin water and smart water is better than drinking a Coca-Cola or a Pepsi or a Dr. Pepper, but you're still not going to get all the benefits out of it.
That's right.
How much better? If it's not that much better, it's.
To me, it's not worth it, especially the money that it costs. Well, see, it's going to be a whole lot better because that Diet Dr. Pepper is going to dehydrate you.
Does it have water in it?
Yes, but it's going to dehydrate
where
you.
water comes on there.
It's just
If it's the first,
it's got compatibility didn't learn to like water.
So in your case, the smart water would be a whole lot better than Dr. Pepper. And then you're also not getting all that extra sugar. Where the vitamin water and the smart waters do have a little bit in them if you read the labels, because they're putting electrolytes is kind of where their process is coming from. It's part of the electrolytes. So you do need a little bit of sugar. But yeah, in that case, the smart water would be better.
It's better, but really, water is
Plain water is better.
clean.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so myth number 3.
Okay.
All liquids hydrate. Put my marker down before I drive people nuts fiddling with my fingers. So again, as we talked about throughout today, this is false because we have some liquids that dehydrate. And that would be your caffeinated drinks specifically. Even some of your hot teas have caffeine in them. So keep that in mind too. Your fresh fruit juices would be a better choice. Your smart water would be a better choice. Your vitamin water would be a better choice. The best choice though is going to be the plain water. Yeah. And adding the fruits in there and the vegetables, they even have diffuser cups where you can put a whole bunch of chopped up fruit in it and then put your water around it so the juices and stuff kind of diffuse throughout the water. And that's really good too. I had one that was pineapples and grapes and I think it had strawberries in it. And just, it gave it a little bit of a flavor to it and made it a little easier to drink. I actually got it when I was doing, when I was participating at the health fair at PCS. That was one of our gifts one year. And so I know they're available.
Did
But
it come in plastic?
it did, unfortunately. That's why I
That
don't use
was
it
my
very often. And it's supposed to be
You make your
UVA.
own glass or stainless steel.
Yeah. And you can easily do that like in a canning jar. Just chop up your fruit and put it in there and let it sit for a little bit. Shake it up and then strain it. If you don't want the chunks of fruit, you can strain it into your glass. Or you can have the fruit in there. One of the hotels that I stayed at a couple of years ago, they had 2 different waters in the glass dispensable things. One had sliced cucumbers and one had sliced lemons.
Yeah, they did that at La Quinta down in Tampa. We stayed there a time or two and they had, I think they had cucumber and lemon or orange or lime all in the same container. They had that in the lobby all day long.
Mm-hmm.
And you have lemon, essential oil of lemon
Yes,
in the water.
I did, and it adds a good flavor to it. I'm going to do one on essential oils too, as one of the future classes. But the like 1 drop of lemon juice is all you would need, honestly, to do like a whole big thing to give
A
it that.
lemon essential oil.
Essential oils are highly, highly concentrated.
So you would use maybe like 1 drop in a gallon of water?
Probably. Yeah, one to 2. I wouldn't do over 2.
That would be, would that make it alkaline water?
Not really.
No.
I've not tested the pH.
Would it just be
to
the
see.
same as putting lemon juice in it?
Flavor wise, yes, but the components that are in that live lemon are going to be, you're going to get so much more out of that than you are out of the essential oil.
I've had neighbors give me quite a few lemons this year, so we squeeze them and freeze them.
Yes.
And then take out the cubes and drop it in our water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a great way to do it. Okay. So to wrap things up a little bit, our bodies clean house, which makes it necessary. Our body cleans house and does repairs overnight. So it uses the available water in that process. If you don't have enough water in your system, you're not going to be able to cleanse and repair like you should. Over time, that can create a huge amount of issues. Drinking water right after you get up in the morning is a great way to help your body flush out toxins from that repair and cleansing process. Doing lemon water is fantastic first thing in the morning. So if you can get yourself in the habit of getting up and getting that glass of water before you do much anything else, especially if you're a coffee drinker in the morning, before you get that cup of coffee, go ahead and drink you a cup or two of water. Or before you do that. Fresh lemons are very cleansing, like we talked about, and they're full of natural enzymes as well. So that's another benefit of the fresh lemons. They alkalize your system, or they become alkaline in your system. Limes do not. Lemons are the only citrus that does that.
They're full of
Enzymes. So I like to squeeze a half a lemon into my water in the morning and drink that down. Sometimes initially it's like really, really tart and it tastes really sour, but then after doing it a few times, I guess your body starts to balance out because it doesn't seem like it's as strong. As a general rule, I believe we are a dehydrated nation. We see that in a lot of the health issues that we have today. We see it in the way that people drink and their diets and everything that just compounds it. But we also see it in constipation as a huge issue, especially among women. And I think a lot of it is we don't have time to drink because when we're if we've had kids, then we're busy taking care of them, and we
have
need
much
to like
time to even take a trip to the bathroom.
no.
That complicates it.
It does. It does. And when I was working at Purina Mills, we would take phone orders from feed stores from 8 in the morning to 11. And it was some days one call right after the next, right after the next. Well, I've always been a coffee drinker from college on. Always been a coffee drinker. So we would get our coffee and everything, and we were drinking coffee in between customers and all. There was one day, I don't know how I lasted. I didn't go to the bathroom from the time I got there until about 11:30. And I had like 2 or 3 cups of coffee on top of it. And I don't advocate that. I don't do that anymore, but that was
Do
an
you
eye
still
opener.
drink coffee at bedtime?
I still have my morning coffee. I try to be more conscientious on my water intake, knowing, okay, I'm dehydrating myself, you need to drink water. And some days I have to remind myself of that too. So. But in the accounts of creation, God even talks about creating water and separating water and land. And he has that water there for the vegetation, for the plants, for the animals, and he created it for a reason. So our bodies overall are about 60% water. And if you remember back to our list of the different parts of our body, how much water is in there, it really brings to mind how important water is. So I'm going to leave you with a challenge this month.
okay. That'll be just the rest of this month.
We're going to add to it, but you're going to start with your water foundation. Preferably, this will be ongoing. Hopefully, you won't quit after this month. But for this month, I want you to go ahead and figure out what your target amount of water to consume is. And then track your water. You don't have to track your water the whole month, but at least if you can track how much water you drink for the first week to see kind of where you're at with it. Keeping in mind your target, you want to try to hit that target. But then try to stay at that target level for the month. And also note as you do this, any symptoms that you see an improvement in.
So if I meet my target amount of water, I think I'm going with that.
If you have a Dr. Pepper, you need to increase your water.